Okay, this one seems interesting. This is a video called Xbox's Exclusive Problem. This is what everybody points to when there's a problem with Xbox or they don't know where Xbox is going. And this is from Ardrid, popped up on my feed. By the way, help me find these videos if you want to. Just shoot me a DM over on Twitter. My DMs are open at Destin. If you want me to react to something, I'll check it out. Let's get into this one right now. Okay, so Xbox's exclusive problem. I have not watched this. I don't usually watch these ahead of time. I like to have my natural reaction. Let's get into it.
On the 18th of January 2022, Microsoft announced a deal worth almost $70 billion to purchase AAA game juggernaut Activision Blizzard. The deal sent shockwaves throughout the gaming community as people realized that this meant that Xbox...
This dude made this whole 3D thing in a program. So that's cool. Whoever this is has some talent. I used to do this stuff in Max, but like, I don't know what the kids are using these days.
would now own Crash Bandicoot, which really doesn't feel right. But it also sent shockwaves throughout market regulators.
Who cares? I mean, Crash Bandicoot, Sony didn't fight to keep it, so like it's gone. Or Naughty Dog didn't own it anymore. Whatever.
Most notably the FTC, who within a few months announced their attempt to entirely block a deal that they felt would lead to a full-on market monopoly.
And they failed.
Before they knew it, Microsoft was sent down a...
Their arguments were so bad, by the way. I don't mean to be like jokey about that, but like they could have had stronger arguments to block the deal, but they were so incompetent at their job that they just failed so spectacularly that everybody covered it. Let's keep going.
Rabbit hole of appeal after appeal, bringing executives from all across the industry into an all-out corporate war between Microsoft and market regulators that...
I mean, really, it was Sony. I think Nvidia was against it, and then they flipped. And was it really an all-out corporate war? It was kind of the FTC and Sony versus Microsoft. Everyone was like, yeah, we don't really care if Microsoft buys Activision. Except for Sony and Google.
Despite some false alarms, took almost 2 years to finally slow down. It's easy to see why you'd want to buy Activision Blizzard. They
What did this person make all this stuff in?
own an amount of IP that rivals that of Nintendo, some of which not only make billions of dollars a year, but are some of the most valuable IP in human history. But the amount of effort and legal battles that was put into securing the Activision Blizzard deal takes on an entirely new meaning when you analyse the company that managed to close said deal. Microsoft, or specifically in this case, Xbox. Xbox has been throwing large swaths of money at every corner of the industry for the past few years now, and this purchase of Activision Blizzard is just the most recent and by...
I mean, they bought Mojang. I wish he was clear about what he means by large swaths of money, because they bought Mojang, they bought Bethesda, and now they're buying Activision Blizzard, and they plan to keep acquiring. Sony also purchased Bungie. As we know, that's not going great, and there's a bunch of turmoil over at PlayStation right now, but there's been turmoil at Xbox also. So, like, I don't know what he means. Like, every corner of the industry, the 3 purchases they've made over the last decade. Anyway.
Far the biggest manifestation of Xbox's attempts to fight their way to icon status. But despite...
I mean, they're already icon status.
Despite popular sentiment online, these attempts are not a practice fueled by corporate greed, nor are they a valiant donation to increase the quality and funding of other studios' games, but rather, it's all an attempt to fix an exclusive problem that Xbox started its life off with. Before we begin, a brief thank you to my patrons on Patreon for making these videos possible. These kind of videos take a very long time to make, so all support is greatly appreciated. And more info on how you can join at the end. But
you can see the work he put into it too, so check out this person's Patreon for sure. I'll link to it in the comments.
But for now, let me bring you back to a time before Halo and Master Chief to show that, as Xbox should have learnt time and time again, simply fighting your way to icon status is easier said than done.
So I question that that terminology. They're iconic. Like everybody knows Xbox. Like them or hate them, people know Xbox. So I don't know what he means by icon status. They're third in the industry. So I'm a little confused. I'm just a little confused by why that terminology is being used.
So, for the first time, let me now unveil Xbox.
The original Xbox was announced at CES 2001 with a release scheduled for later that year, and right from the get-go they had a massive mountain to climb. Or more accurately, two. Their competitors, Sony's PlayStation and Nintendo's had already been in operation for many years and had become well-oiled machines pumping out exclusive title after exclusive title, many of which became long-running and beloved series of games that millions of people would buy.
Yeah. Okay, I think what he's saying is like they had a little bit of headway. Like the PlayStation 1 didn't have a ton of amazing games. They got there by the PlayStation 2, of course, with stuff like Grand Theft Auto hitting there first, and like PS2 was where it was at. Metal Gear, so many great titles on the PS2. Xbox comes on the market and they have like Halo and they have a few others, but yeah,
an expensive box for just because that box came exclusively with that game. But unlike,
and remember, this is an old way of thinking, and I've talked about this a lot. The boxes are not going to be the play forever. There'll always be a box for you to love, right? But it's just going to be services on your TV at some point. Like gaming is going to evolve drastically over the next several years.
Industry of just a decade prior, where the major market players weren't as set in stone and thus
internet. To give you some context, they just showed the Dreamcast. The big deal was that you could use the internet with your Dreamcast to play stuff like, I believe, Persona Online. Xbox had an Ethernet port. PlayStation 2 released their Ethernet port. Just having internet on your box has only been around since like PS2 era. So just think about that small facet of technology that became standard by the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, right? And then, the era after that, it's obviously just everybody's used to it.
Liable for quick collapse. Nintendo and PlayStation were titanic, stable entities with millions of diehard fans that were either built rapidly off the fatal failures of the previous gaming giant or gradually refined over decades of quality products and establishing of trust, and Xbox being the new kid on the block.
I think he's conflating two ideas though. Because PS1 to PS2, that's not decades of bangers, and PlayStation and Nintendo were trying to collaborate, and the whole reason PlayStation existed was because they said, well, we'll just make our own video game console, right? So Sony and PlayStation, they've done great, but I feel like he's painting a picture that sort of mixes present or future times, decades of experience with what was happening at the time. So a little bit of a mixed bag of ideas.
Had none of that, and they found themselves in a position where they had to replicate the market control of Nintendo and PlayStation as fast as they could without the decades of time or fatal failures to capitalize on. And the quickest way to do that is with exclusive reasons to buy the Xbox over the competition. They started with the release of Halo Combat Evolved, an exclusive launch title for the original Xbox in 2001, which is not only a game lauded by the gaming community as a masterpiece to this day, but is also historically significant for popularizing the twin-stick analog control scheme for first-person shooters that
That's a modern control. You got to remember at the time that you had the Duke, you had the bigger Xbox One controller at the time. So you had this massive chonky controller, and this Halo game comes out of nowhere, and it's just, even to this day, a fantastic first-person shooter. For me, arguably though, like Halo was the first game I played on Xbox. That's what got my attention. That made Xbox. Halo did, right? And then I start getting into stuff like Rainbow Six 3, where you could use voice commands with your headset and stuff like that, like cool little technology. And then what was Burnout and the racing game genre, Project Gotham Racing. Like the original Xbox, man, there were some really good games on the original Xbox, and they really did cement their place at that time.
Subsequently became industry standard. This started a long string of equally influential and successful sequels that gave Xbox its killer app, something that Xbox never managed to replicate outside of Halo, and that's not for a lack of trying. Xbox's strategy at the time was not necessarily
Yeah, because if you think about it, Epic Games made Gears of War. And then Xbox created the coalition to continue developing Gears of War. By the way, where is Gears of War? It has been too long since Gears of War 5. So we have Gears and Halo, and then, Microsoft Flight Simulator is an Xbox sort of exclusive. But those first two, you got to remember, they were purchased. They purchased Halo from Bungie, and they purchased Gears of War from Epic as an exclusive.
Necessarily to build their exclusive lineup with
They
teams
lost Mass
entirely
Effect.
in-house at Microsoft, but to fill it with games made specifically for the Xbox by third-party publishers such as Sega.
Yeah, and like DOA, that's cross-platform. Jet Set Radio Future is just gone. Panzer Dragoon, it's whatever. It's around still, but it's not like it was.
Koei Tecmo as part of a several-year-long partnership deal. The games that resulted from these external partnerships ended up being very good, but unlike the studios owned by the competition, the only incentives from this deal for these external teams was just to make whatever game they wanted in whatever genre they wanted, but only for the Xbox. When Microsoft needed games that could compete against Nintendo and PlayStation's biggest franchises. So whilst Nintendo and PlayStation were releasing top-of-the-line platformers, RPGs, and
Oh yeah, you know what? I take back a comment about the original PlayStation. The original PlayStation had the Metal Gear game. They had some big games on the original PlayStation. So, yeah. For me though, I kind of skipped that whole era. The Nintendo, like I didn't have any money at the time, so I would like play Super Nintendo and sometimes rent a Nintendo 64 to play like Mortal Kombat, right? Mortal Kombat 3 at home. PS2 is where I really got back into it in a big way.
and first-person shooters, Xbox only had an answer to one of them, with the rest being more experimental niche titles that aren't realistically going to become system sellers. And because the games produced,
I feel it's a little strange that they're mentioning these. What about Splinter Cell? Was Splinter Cell exclusive, or was it cross-platform at the time? I know it was an answer to Metal Gear. Maybe it wasn't.
from the deal were still wholly owned by their respective companies, it acted more as a delaying of Xbox's exclusive problem rather than a solution. And the few internal teams that Xbox did have either tried and failed to make games that could compete with the likes of Mario, Zelda, and Final Fantasy.
Whoa. Forza Motorsport was not a failure. Neither was Mechasalt. Mechasalt was quite popular. I'll give you a Phantom Dust and Blank, but the other
Fantasy, or didn't have the time, manpower, experience, or quite frankly, the interest to take on these challenges, leaving Xbox's killer app as essentially the only app worth buying an Xbox for. And although it was enough to keep Xbox relevant in the eyes of core gamers,
I feel like there's games not being listed here. Was it really just Halo? Because you look at the third parties, just like I played Splinter Cell on my Xbox because I feel like Xbox had an edge for Splinter Cell. Rainbow Six 3, Rainbow Six Raven Shield, the Burnout games. Those are all third party though. When you talk about exclusives on the platform, maybe I think that's what he's getting at. I mean, the whole video is about exclusives, of course. I'm going to pause right there. I got to get my son. So yeah, I looked it up before coming back, and the original Splinter Cell was an Xbox exclusive. It was kind of their answer. It was a timed exclusive for 2 years. And I looked up some of the other exclusive games for Xbox that were out around that time, and nothing really jumped out to me if you go to the Wikipedia entries, but there were like Ninja Gaiden Black. Did we forget about Ninja Gaiden or Project Gotham? Like the launch window wasn't great, but by the end of the original Xbox, there was some good stuff. Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, Conquer Live and Reloaded. Yeah, there were a few more than he listed. Oh, Shenmue was on the list. Here's a top 10. Fusion Frenzy, Blinks, Dead or Alive, Broken Sword, Steel Battalion with the big peripherals, Conquer, Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay. How did I forget about that? That game was awesome. That was one of my favorites. PGR, Jet Set, Oddworld, Stranger's Wrath, Ninja Gaiden, Morrowind, Jade Empire, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell was timed, Halo and Halo 2, Shenmue, Fable, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Like, Well, that was Knights of the Old Republic original Xbox? Wow. That's pretty crazy. See, I forgot about that. And there's a reason the original Xbox sold as well as it did. So let's not pretend like it had no games. There was some good stuff on there.
The much larger casual market instead flocked to the GameCube and especially the PlayStation 2 as their consoles of choice.
Absolutely agree with that. The PlayStation 2 was massive because it had, was it a Blu-ray or a DVD player? I want to say it was a DVD player, and at the time that was like a big deal.
Leaving Microsoft handily in last place and with no games to work with by the end of the generation.
That was a weird transition.
Now, to all the Final Fantasy fans watching that just began typing a really pedantic comment about how I implied Final Fantasy is a PlayStation franchise when it is in fact owned by Square Enix, hold that
Okay, he's talking about owned franchises. Got it. Okay.
thought for just a second, because although you are correct, it is also true that no mainline Final Fantasy game released on either the GameCube or the original Xbox, unless you count Crystal Chronicles as mainline, which I don't know why you would. The same is true for the Devil May Cry series, the Tekken games of that era, the Kingdom Hearts games, Dragon Quest, Guitar Hero, and Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. None of these are owned by PlayStation either, so
I wonder why I used the Delta image. That's kind of funny. Like, yeah.
why restrict your game to just one audience? Because porting a game to
Because the install base was, you saw the numbers there, it was like 158 million versus 30 million. And you already have the established relationship from the PlayStation 1 to the PlayStation 2 era. So it makes sense at the time, like when your install base is 120 or 150 million or whatever, yeah, you want to get as many games as possible there. Modern day, however, that sort of idea of having everything locked on a box, Nintendo is still doing it. There's just Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox at this point, really, right? Because we're moving more and more into a world where PC or just your television or your phone have access to everything.
a console takes time and money, and why bother spending all of that on porting to the GameCube or Xbox when the vast majority of gamers were gaming on the PlayStation 2? This is the second part to console exclusivity that people don't talk about, or rather, when your console becomes so popular that developers don't need to worry about porting to other consoles to reach a wide enough audience anymore, and thus will release their games on only your console, effectively making them exclusives.
True for this era. Absolutely true for this era. Agree with that. Modern era, that conversation is shifting pretty quickly.
In and of themselves, at least temporarily, and allowing you to circumvent your exclusive problem entirely. Of course, this is easier said than done when it comes to the subject of this video.
There were a lot of, I just listed a whole bunch of good games that were on Xbox though, and they used the same strategy. Like they had Ubisoft make Splinter Cell and then they bought exclusivity rights. Anyway.
Xbox would need to release a console of the right price, with the right features and the right hardware at the right time in comparison to their competitors to become the market's console of choice. And not even the best marketers and engineers in the world could predict what other companies had in store. So it was really nice that when the time came for the next generation of consoles, Nintendo and Sony made sure their consoles were so bad that Microsoft didn't even need to predict what they were doing.
The PlayStation 3 was not that bad. The PlayStation 3 was overpriced, but in terms of tech and what it was capable of, it was really, really cool. Mudstorm was awesome. The Metal Gear games that came out on the PlayStation 3, like Metal Gear Solid 4, still hasn't been ported anywhere to this day, but the marketing was awful. Wait, is he arguing? The problem with the Wii wasn't that it was bad. The problem with the Wii, there wasn't a problem with the Wii. It sold huge numbers. It was like one of the best. I think it like broke records. So nothing was wrong with the Wii. It sold exceptionally well for Nintendo.
Codenamed the Revolution, the Nintendo Wii is unanimously...
Was that actually... I don't know if was that actually the code name or was that like the rumor going around at the time? Because I remember a leaked thing where it was like 3D and a camera would track you and stuff like that. And you'd wear a helmet.
known for being controlled not with a traditional dual analog controller, but by a white stick, with at the time brand new motion control technology that brought with it countless opportunities for never before seen gameplay mechanics whilst also being extremely easy to use. And Nintendo knew this prospect of whipping a stick around and feeling like you're actually playing tennis would appeal to a gigantic casual audience, and appeal to them it did. The hope was that by coalescing this...
he was not arguing. He was not... when he prefaced it by saying like it was bad, and then he showed the PS3 and the Wii, and I'm like, well, wait, the Wii doesn't make sense for that argument. And he's talking about how the audience was different.
Massive grandmas and family goers to the Wii, Nintendo could convert them all into more hardcore gamers that would buy the next Mario, Zelda, and Metroid releases. But, as we have all learned from the advent of mobile gaming, casual gamers are fickle, are only likely to play games for an average of 5 minutes between other activities, and are incredibly unlikely to sit down and play the newest Zelda game on a console.
Wait. What? I don't think that's true. I don't think any of those statements are true. Mobile gamers only play games for 5 minutes. Maybe when all you could play on your phone was Snake and Bejeweled. But today, nah, mobile gaming is massive.
Console that otherwise contains outdated internal hardware and antiquated online features. This left Nintendo in a bubble, a highly profitable bubble, but one that Xbox and PlayStation did not operate within. A bubble that was quickly left hollow after the initial hype period of its release died.
The initial high period of a decade? Like the Wii was popular until those consoles ended. Like, no. The Wii, if you want to talk about a bad Nintendo console, talk about the Wii U. The Wii, no, nobody would say that was a bad
down with comparatively low software sales.
Best-selling Wii game, Wii Sports, 82.9. Non-casual games, Super Smash, 13.3.
For most of their non-casual oriented games, and a bubble that third-party publishers would not even dare to touch with a 10-foot pole because of the previously mentioned weak hardware.
I don't think that's accurate. I'd have to look into it, but that seems incorrect.
And the PlayStation 3 wasn't much better. The deal sounds intriguing to any gamer, no matter how dedicated. Built-in backwards compatibility with not only the PlayStation 2's entire catalogue, but the original PlayStations as well. The ability to act as a central media hub for music, photos, and Blu-ray discs. Sophisticated capabilities for online play, and incredibly advanced hardware performance using Sony's proprietary Cell processor. But all of this came at a price. One that most ordinary people, let alone gamers, weren't willing to pay. What's more is that the advanced hardware of Sony's Cell processor was not only so expensive to produce that they'd sell each PS3 at a significant loss, but it was also an arse ache to develop for because of its reliance on an APU, a relatively new and confusing piece of hardware at the time, meaning developers didn't like it either. Both the Wii and the PlayStation 3 left the majority of game developers with no conventional place to go at the advent of the 7th generation of consoles.
Well, I mean, you could still buy a PlayStation 3. I was there for the Wii era. The lines were out the door. The hype for that thing was massive. It was like popular through the majority of the console lifecycle, as far as I remember. And if you look at the numbers, the PlayStation 3 eventually caught up because they did slim models. They reduced the price. They looked at what people were using. And yeah, like just to say that, I think the stronger argument that he's made so far is that the Wii was like a separate market. That's absolutely true, right? PlayStation 3 came out the gate too expensive, but it caught up later with a fantastic slate of software. And Xbox, though, like Xbox had Gears, Mass Effect. He's going to get into it, but Xbox knocked it out of the park with the 360 era. And that's why these rumors about them launching early with the next console makes a lot of sense.
So when Xbox released a bog standard comparison...
By the way, he's using an image of like the third gen Xbox that came out, because there was the white one with the 20 and the 60, I want to say, or there was the one with nothing and you would have to buy the hard drive separate. Then there was a 20 gig and then there was a 60, I want to say, and the 60 came shortly after the original slate. Anyway, let's continue.
Comparatively low-priced machine of similar hardware strengths to the PS3, developers both far and wide couldn't help but jump on Microsoft's ship. Microsoft had come into the 7th generation expecting to fight for their chance at the spotlight, but because of these aforementioned fatal failures from its two competitors, the Xbox...
Why is he phrasing it that? Why would he phrase them as fatal failures? How is it a fatal failure for the Wii to be the #1 selling console of all time for many years? Like, it destroyed records, like fastest selling console, like, yeah. And the PS3 ended up outselling the 360. So like some of this terminology, like fatal failures, it wasn't really fatal in the long run. They adjusted and corrected and did very well. And the Wii never needed to adjust. It was the most popular thing. You couldn't get it for several years.
Xbox 360 released a full year before both the PS3 and the Wii had sealed the deal on the console war before it had even started, by basically being the least weird and the best priced of the three 7th generation consoles. Cast your mind back to the mid to late 2000s
I was
and
there.
you'll know. Fond memories of Halo 3 and Modern Warfare 2 on Xbox Live,
He's right.
the indie arcade that came with them, the birth of online content creation on video games, and the weirdos on the school playground left out of the hype because they owned a PS3. All of these memories and events were centered
Really? I don't know.
around a green box that left a profound impact on the lives of tens of millions. But no other entity was impacted
He just showed stats that showed the Wii sold 100 million units and this sold 85. So
as much by this as Microsoft itself. The success of the Xbox 360 was monumental for Microsoft, but it was a success fueled largely off the failures of others, and definitely not off their lineup of exclusive games they had prepared for the 360. Of course, Halo was still breaking sales.
no, I don't agree with that either, because like once the console launched, they had Gears, they had Mass Effect, they had Call of Duty. Like, to say it has nothing to do with the games. Now, the video is about so when he talks about exclusives, he's talking about internal studio developed exclusives, but everybody was on the 360 and there were a ton of exclusives for the 360. So
Sales records, but most of their exclusives after the first few years performed inconsistent at
this was the launch title. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts was like the third Banjo-Kazooie, I want to say. Lost Odyssey was great, but it was part of their Blue Dragon Japanese collaboration.
best in odds, but most of their exclusives after the first few years performed inconsistent at best in sales. Probably.
I mean, you could say that about any, like if you just showed every game that was exclusive to PlayStation 4, like Killzone it wasn't a great game. I played it a lot, but like, yeah.
Because they decided to call them such amazing names like Blue Dragon, but the Xbox 360's exclusives overall did not become an instant success because they were on the most popular console in the way that Microsoft may have thought they would.
Rising.
And you'll see the true effect of this when advisor to Microsoft's Entertainment and Devices division Don Matrick was promoted to the role of head of Xbox in October 2010. Whilst the latter half of the 2000s saw
when did Mass Effect come out? See, I gotta Google this stuff again. Came out in 2010. Mass Effect 2 came out in 2010. He doesn't even have Mass Effect listed. It was a 2007 title for the 360. Like, why? His argument is strong. I don't know why he would have to like pretend games like that didn't hit the platform also. It's a little weird.
dozens of unique titles being either commissioned for or created by Xbox for the 360,
Okay.
the dawn of the 2010s saw Matrick move towards abandoning their pursuit of exclusives in exchange for better deals on third-party hits such as Call of Duty, and deciding to finally embrace the full mass of casual appeal with the launch of the Xbox Kinect in November of 2010. A camera hoping to one-up Nintendo's Wii Remote by being capable of motion capturing the player's movements onto on-screen characters without the need to hold anything at all in one's hand. It sounds impressive in theory, but looked clumsy on the stages of E3, performed too clumsily in the homes of hardcore gamers, and ultimately failed to capture the attention of said hardcore gamers that populated the Xbox 360's user base. A user base that bought the console in part because of those abandoned exclusives. But this did not matter to Microsoft or Don Matrick.
Don Matrick really didn't mess stuff up until the Xbox One era, I'd have to look at what came out after 2010, but
Because why bother spending time and money on making quality exclusive games that will probably flop when you've convinced the majority of people to buy and use the Xbox 360 to play the latest Call of Duty or FIFA installment anyway? The shift to more casual appeal with the Kinect brought in millions more players to the Xbox 360 without tampering with the console's already established stranglehold on third-party games and publishers, and head of Xbox Don Mattrick was considered in the business world to be the star of the show. In August 2011, Fortune magazine cited him as one of the smartest people in the tech industry, and a year later, in 2012, he was named as one of the top 10 brilliant technology visionaries by CNN Money, alongside the founder of Android, Andy Rubin, and designer of the iPhone, Johnny Ive. And it's all thanks to his role in developing and releasing the highly popular Kinect peripheral, despite...
I'm just trying to look up 360 games that came out after 2010. Because I am a little curious about the premise that, like, it just didn't work, right? And of course, my internet's being dumb right now. Why now? All right, we'll just continue on.
the disappointment of hardcore gamers, public perception on the Xbox brand could not have been any higher because of a team and technology Mattrick was responsible for assembling. They made movie tie-ins, dancing games, sports games, fitness games, blew sales expectations out the water by selling 10 million units in a single year, and even saw Kinect used in academic and...
A lot of those Kinect titles I thought came out after the Xbox One because they were already developing the tech. My lighting's a little messed up. Just gotta... My son's excited.
commercial settings thanks to its state-of-the-art depth sensing technology. And all of this led to the Xbox 360 being the uncontested victor of the 7th generation of consoles overall.
They lost though. Like historically, if you look at where they landed, they did not end up being number one. The PlayStation 3 caught up, and the Wii ended up outselling a lot of those platforms. Nothing's like loading right now, so I can't use Google. Oh well. Let's go back to the video.
Overall, and better yet, a new frontier was just on the horizon for Xbox. If the Kinect blew the minds of the average consumer, then what Don and his team at Xbox had in store for the next generation of consoles was going to absolutely eviscerate them. It was time for a new vision for Xbox. One that would not only expand on the entertainment juggernaut they had established in the prior years, but consolidate both sides of the entertainment spectrum under one X-signed umbrella. After years of hard work by Don and his revolutionary team, the date was set, and journalists from countless publications sat down with laptops and laps to witness Microsoft's grand foray into the 8th generation of...
You know what's really funny? A lot of the stuff here is like, oh, everybody loved Don Mattrick. They fired him shortly after the Xbox One reveal, which he's about to get to. It's like, oh, Xbox could do no wrong and everything. But I would have to look it up. But I feel like the picture being painted about 2010 on Xbox, I don't know if that's correct. The first several years of the Xbox One era, though, were very, very messy. And the announcement was also messy. And you know, I talk about this a lot about cycles in the industry, right? And the Xbox One was Xbox's whoopsie cycle. All right, let's keep going.
Consoles on the 21st of May 2013. And if the Kinect was Don Mattrick's magnum opus, then the shitstorm that he created in the coming days and months is undoubtedly his legacy. The reveal of the Xbox One was one of the biggest PR disasters in gaming history.
Absolutely agree. The Xbox One is honestly one of the worst things that happened to Xbox. It wasn't until like the Xbox One X happened, like they almost shut it all down after this. Don Mattrick really messed up with this release. So everything he's going to say here is probably going to be right on the nose.
to adapt to an oncoming shift in entertainment consumption far too early. Fans and journalists alike were left completely dumbfounded when head of Xbox Don Mattrick came out on stage and professed the Xbox One's capabilities as an all-in-one television and entertainment device, rather than its abilities to deliver next-generation games and graphics. And the hardcore gaming community was immediately left skeptical of the Xbox One's chances of satisfying their want for high-quality gaming experiences going forward. And the worst of it had yet to come. In the next few months, Xbox announced the revised Kinect would not only come with the console, but be required to play it, something the hardcore community didn't like. The console's launch price was announced to be set at...
You didn't require a Kinect. Maybe they've changed it later and he's going to get to that, but a Kinect was not required to play the original Xbox. It just came bundled with it, and it made it more expensive.
$499, something both the hardcore and casual player base did not like. And then they announced a DRM policy for the Xbox One that banned used games from being used outside the original owner's console and required the Xbox One to always be connected to the internet, something that everyone...
Yeah, at the time, that was like a big deal, but nowadays you have to like at least sign on once to update your firmware and verify that your console is legit. Yeah,
absolutely hated. Xbox quickly backed away from all except the price tag in an effort to not burn every single bridge they'd built since the 360 era. But as they looked to rebuild those bridges, Xbox soon realized something even worse. That...
Oh yeah, he didn't mention Oblivion for the 360. I'm very confused about that from before.
In the aftermath of all this, that the bridges were hastily being rebuilt not by themselves, but by PlayStation. Although the Xbox 360 did win the 7th generation of consoles overall, Sony had been working around the clock to build back trust among developers and fix their botched launch of the PlayStation 3. And their work had meant they actually surpassed the 360 in sales figures by the time the PlayStation 4 was just around the corner. And with Xbox seemingly knocking into walls at every turn, Sony took that as an opportunity to burn them.
The PlayStation 4 was awesome. It was so much better than the original Xbox One. Microsoft really messed up with the Xbox One. Nope. Like, if you look objectively at how Don Mattrick handled it, it was a disaster. Absolutely. And the PlayStation 4 was great. It just did all the stuff that a console was supposed to do. And right now, I think we're in a little bit of a weird time with what Xbox is trying to do versus what PlayStation is trying to do. Like, they have all that good faith from the PlayStation 4 going into the PlayStation 5, sold 50 million units. Xbox is somewhere around 25 million units, I want to say. So the console market and the idea of how content is delivered is changing. So it's just sort of interesting how so much has changed even since the PS4 era.
Even harder at any chance they could. When Microsoft announced the Xbox One's launch price at $499 at E3 2013, Sony one-upped them by assuredly showing the public a price tag $100 cheaper to resounding applause.
I'm very proud to announce that PlayStation
I was here.
4 will be available at $399.
Yeah. I think I was at this.
When Xbox announced a DRM policy for the Xbox One that effectively made used games completely unusable, Sony made a short video last second showing how simple it is to play used games on PlayStation 4, almost mocking Microsoft for their mistake, and all the gaming press could think about.
No, not almost. They absolutely were mocking Xbox.
During all this chaos was what head of Xbox Don Mattrick had to say to assure diehard Xbox fans that everything was going to be okay. And this was the visionary's actual response.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't, like it?
In one fell
What an idiot.
swoop, PlayStation 4 had not only positioned...
It was like all that happened in like a day or a week, and Don Mattrick just drove all that good faith into the ground. People were mad. Like, the 360 and the PS3 were doing quite well for each other, and like there was that conversation. They were like neck and neck by the end of that era. And then Don Mattrick comes out, he's just like, here you go. Here's this thing with all these terrible things. And PlayStation's like, wow. Yeah, we're $100 cheaper. You can just play whatever you want on it. Like, we don't care. Yeah. Good luck, Xbox.
Themselves as the console for core gamers, but the cheapest and easiest option for casuals as well, taking everything Microsoft had established in the previous generation in the blink of an eye. And Microsoft quickly found themselves in a situation all too familiar to them, where they had to give people an actual reason to buy an Xbox One over its competitors through quality exclusives. But as we've already addressed, Xbox abandoned their pursuit of quality exclusives in the latter half of the 360 era.
Okay,
meaning
that's what he was
that
setting
at the
up.
time when they needed them the most, the state of Xbox exclusive games at any given time was about as good as whatever the most recent Halo game was, and those conveniently stopped being good at around the same time. So whilst Sony was
I mean, debatable. I think the problems with 4 is mostly the online. In hindsight, like, I really don't like the enemy design in 4. Or was it 5? 5 I did not like. Anyway.
Building strong relationships with first and third party developers alike, Xbox had nothing going for them. If I asked you to name games that you'd categorize strictly as Nintendo games or PlayStation games, you'd be able to name a
Whoa, okay. What about Xbox games? Halo, Gears. He's right. He's kind of got you. There's Halo, Gears, but like today, you have Hellblade, which will be an Xbox exclusive. You're going to have the Elder Scrolls games. You have Starfield. So like they're correcting that issue today. But at the time, yeah, he's right. Because what Xbox did is they bought a bunch of timed exclusives and not exclusive exclusives. There's also Forza and Forza Horizon. I guess we'll give them one for that. And they're getting back to where they need to be. But it took them too long.
Plethora of titles and franchises that are inextricably tied to the identity of those platforms, and in turn give them a baseline of value. But try to do the same for Xbox games, and you may be able to name a few, but you'd always come vastly short when comparing to the titans that are Nintendo or Sony. This is the root cause of all of Xbox's problems in the modern era. The decision to abandon establishing a legacy of exclusive games whilst both of their competitors were still on the treadmill, in the hope that their system could leave a mark on gamers not for its unique products, but by being the best place to use other people's products. And when they no longer were the best place to...
And the whole Xbox One era, that was kind of their fallback. They're like, we're a third-party console. And I think I talked about that on Unlocked a lot at the time. It's just like, well, it's a good place to play third-party games, but because they had all that other stuff tied into it, that wasn't really true until the Xbox One X came out. And then you had the PlayStation 4 Pro. Like, Xbox just could not get a break.
To use other people's products, they didn't have the legacy they needed to break their fall like other companies would. And all of this was facilitated by a visionary who tunnel visioned on the potential prospects of casual appeal.
This is the first time I've ever heard anybody call Don Matrick a visionary, but okay.
It's not a problem that Don Matrick caused, but one he definitely accelerated the prominence and severity of. And by the middle of 2014...
No, it's Don Matrick.
He had left Microsoft to lead mobile game developer Zynga, and left his successor as head of Xbox Game Studios, Phil Spencer,
Pretty sure he left Zynga also,
to inherit said problem. Phil was definitely more in tune with the hardcore gaming community than...
Yeah, and Satya basically said, hey, should we get out of the business altogether? And Phil's like, nah, we can figure this out. And he's been digging out of that hole since. It's insane what he had to fix.
Don was, but he still struggled within the first few years of his leadership to turn things around for Xbox One. He tried making partnership deals with external developers a la the original Xbox, but when that gave very
And then PlayStation bought him.
similar results to the first time they tried it, Phil Spencer wondered what solution was going to fix their exclusive problem. And then he suddenly remembered what kind of company he worked for. In 2014, they suddenly purchased Swedish indie game studio Mojang, creators of Minecraft, as well as making it clear at conferences and press events going forward that Xbox's focus would shift hard towards producing the highest quality games rather than all-in-one entertainment. He tried again at the whole partnership thing, but when that resulted in nothing but a cancelled Platinum game, he decided to double down.
Partnership thing. But I'm just going to hear this guy out.
Acquisition train in 2018 when he announced a series of acquisitions at E3 of Compulsion Games, InXL Entertainment, Undead Labs, Playground Games, Ninja Theory, and Obsidian Entertainment. Because Microsoft may not have had a lot of exclusive games, but what they did have a lot of was money.
Yeah, so they bought the exclusives. Okay, let's not do third-party deals anymore. The industry is in a crazy spot right now. Companies are like, sure, we'll sell. We still get to make games under Microsoft. They're just exclusive to the Xbox and Windows. Okay, let's go.
Far more than Nintendo and Sony combined, and because of that unique advantage, they realised they could just buy popular game studios and their intellectual properties outright to fix their exclusive problem, instead of giving them exclusivity.
I mean, way back when PlayStation was getting started, they did that with a few companies also. Obviously, the amount of money was different at the time, but this isn't like an unheard of practice. I think it's notable because it is so much more money. Like when you start looking at the Mojang deal is obviously has paid for itself. Then there is the Bethesda deal, which is massive, and the Activision Blizzard deal. So like Xbox is set up now, and PlayStation, they're like crumbling under their own weight or something. I don't know what is going on at PlayStation, but it's very concerning.
Deals and hoping they stayed. They followed through the next year with the acquisition of Double Fine Productions in 2019
Psychonauts 2.
And then shocked the gaming community.
So we got Psychonauts 2 from here. Ninja Theory is still working on Hellblade 2. Obsidian did the space game. I'm blanking on the name of it right now. Playground did Forza Horizon 5, which was a phenomenal game. Compulsion finally announced South of Midnight. Mojang, of course, just raking in money with Minecraft. InXile, rumored to be working on a Fable remake. They released Clockwork Revolution trailer, and then Undead Labs, State of Decay. So that's sort of what's going on with those studios.
By spending $7.5 billion to purchase Bethesda, creators of the Elder Scrolls.
And the first game from Bethesda has been StarCraft with some expansions for Fallout 76 and ESO with more to come. And Starfield, while contentious, has seemingly done well for them, profit-wise.
Scrolls and Fallout and owners of Doom, Dishonored and Prey in September 2020. But even this was apparently not enough for Phil. The PlayStation 4 had not only become...
What? Phil Spencer wanted to keep buying companies. I don't know if that's true, but yeah.
Become one of the best-selling consoles of all time at this point, but Nintendo had made a staggering comeback after the abject failure that was the Wii U, with the release of the innovative Nintendo Switch in March 2017, finally bumping Xbox down once again to last place in the console war by the time the Xbox Series X was to release. It quickly became obvious that the purchase of a culturally beloved company such as Bethesda would not be enough to bring...
Nah, Activision was already in the works. So like, let's not pretend that all these conversations are sort of happening in tandem. I don't have the exact dates, obviously, but like Activision was a thing around the same time. They were looking at like a ton of other acquisitions.
Bring them back on top. Phil needed something bigger, something that would satiate the appetite of gamers so hard they're forced to switch sides to Xbox. And this hungry search for console power would lead him to the monumental deal that began this video.
Yeah, Activision Blizzard. I hope this music's not copywritten. Like, there's been some assets used in this video. I'm like,
the $70 billion Activision Blizzard deal is the manifestation of 20 years of failures at Xbox. A patchwork.
Whoa. Hold on now.
Of 20 years.
Okay, this was not a failure. Let's stop saying the original Xbox was a failure, because it did pretty well for being a new console on the market. This is a failure. But to say like you're including the years where they clearly won and where you say they won with the 360. So like, no, it's not 20 years. I guess if you're just stacking up the failures, sure. But really the main culprit is this. It was the Xbox One.
years of failures at Xbox. A patchwork attempt to fix their exclusive problem by just throwing as much money at it as possible and hoping that'll be enough. But just as much as this is a patchwork solution to their problems, as soon as the FTC got involved, it soon became apparent with very recent events just how much damage it would cause to Xbox internally. When making your case to governments of the world, a lot of sensitive information is passed around. Sensitive information that is very easily leaked.
Oh, because they leaked the info? That's like, who cares? Most people are probably like, I don't think that's that big of a deal.
In a case as big as this, which is exactly what happened to Xbox in September 2023. Extremely detailed plans for the Xbox business leading up to 2030, including timelines and images of upcoming hardware, lists of exclusive games coming to their systems, a lot of which were unannounced at the time of the leak, and business emails going back and forth between Phil Spencer and the CEO of Microsoft as a whole on the future of the Xbox brand. And although we can sit back and gawk at the chaos and damage that this has caused to Microsoft,
has it really been damaging? I would argue that the leaks haven't really been that damaging. Like, we haven't seen most of those announcements yet, so.
More interesting to me, and is also more valuable to the gaming industry as a whole, is what this detailed look into Xbox's current mindset might possibly mean for the gaming industry as a whole. Through the leaked Phil Spencer emails, we have seen interest.
He's going to get to it, but it means the console race is not going to continue indefinitely. Consoles are like a thing, but it's not as big of a deal as like people on Twitter make it out to be. Every brand is going to be expanding, maybe not Nintendo, but to other devices.
From Microsoft in buying out studios such as Warner Brothers Games, and most notably Valve and Nintendo of all companies. If any one of these deals were to go through, they would have an effect on the games industry drastically higher than any of Xbox's acquisitions.
Here's the thing. I think Warner Brothers is going to go to somebody. Nintendo's not going anywhere. They keep laughing them out of the office. Valve isn't going anywhere, right? Like they're not going to sell. And when you're talking about buying companies, of course you're going to be like, well, these are the biggest companies with the most IP that would help us. But are they going to sell? No.
Thus far. However, Xbox is unlikely to even get close to making any of these deals a reality, as even in the slight chance that these companies accepted a deal from Microsoft, if the FTC put this much of a fuss over market monopolies because of the attempt to buy a company like Activision Blizzard, then I can't imagine how they would get if Microsoft announced a deal on Valve or Nintendo, two companies that either actually have monopolies on a certain large sector of the industry or are Microsoft's literal competitors in the same sector. It's not entirely certain, but I believe this has left Xbox with a limit to how big their acquisitions can be going forward, meaning Microsoft are either going to have to look around.
I think they could buy Warner, or at least the IPs from Warner. I think they could buy Sega, they could buy Take-Two, like they could buy a few more franchises, but yeah. They have enough in their stable now that they're, in terms of IP, like dead even with PlayStation, which means they're comparable to where Nintendo's going to be in terms of IP. They need to start getting the games out though, regularly, and they have to be big hits.
And for publishers of similar size to Activision Blizzard, be content with only bringing in smaller developers like Ninja Theory or Obsidian from now on, or stop with the acquisitions entirely. And although that may sound like the end to Microsoft's current growth strategy, I would argue that it's only the end to part of it. This is something that Phil Spencer has alluded to in the past, and it's also something I've failed to mention up until now, and that is the existence of Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah. What about it? Wait, I'm sorry. Xbox Game Pass has been around for like a long time. Let's see where he's going.
A subscription service started by Microsoft in 2017, Xbox Game Pass
that PlayStation is trying to copy, that Nintendo released a somewhat similar service to. It's the future. Like, that's where these manufacturers are going to go. That's how it's going to change. People say it's Netflix of gaming. Netflix was just like the start, but that's where we're going.
Has only started to gain major traction just in the last couple of years. The service provides players with an ever-expanding selection of games across Xbox and PC, whilst only having to pay as little as $10 a month for all of said games, which at this point numbers in the hundreds, and even include...
Well, it's comparable to PlayStation Plus, but the big appeal is day one releases, and I think it's like 350 something games. There were like 9,000 games or something, I think they said on Game Pass. I don't remember. I just saw an article about
new releases from Xbox on the same day that they are sold in stores. The offer sounds incredibly generous to consumers, so much so that me simply...
It doesn't sound, it's fantastic for consumers. I bet he brings up ownership.
Describing it sounds like an ad, but Microsoft want you to think that way. Because the frequent acquisitions Xbox have been pursuing over the last few years aren't in service in making Xbox consoles more valuable, but to make Xbox Game Pass more valuable.
Not just Game Pass, all of their services are more valuable because of the acquisitions.
The idea behind it is that if you own the studios that are making Call of Duty, Crash Bandicoot and Overwatch, you can put those games on Xbox Game Pass day one whilst paying little to no licensing fees to those studios, not only saving a huge amount of money on licensing as...
I mean, I don't know about them trying to save money on licensing, unless that was an FTC thing and I missed it. Like, I guess you're talking about like a lot of money. Yeah, I guess it's a lot of money.
As demonstrated by the recent leaks, but also giving Game Pass a level of almost guaranteed value in the eyes of gamers. Because if Starfield launched on Game Pass day one, then chances are the next Elder Scrolls and Fallout games will also...
Not chances, they will. Unless Microsoft drastically reverts their policy.
Do the same, as will every other Bethesda, Activision or Blizzard game going forward.
Activision Blizzard will be cross-platform, and there is a policy that they can't do that.
The untapped potential of this hasn't...
Or they're not going to do that. I think they need a few years.
Been lost on either Microsoft or the gaming community, with just over 33 million monthly subscriptions to Game Pass as of 2022, which at $10 a month equates to roughly $330 million a month in profit.
A month. I gotta sneeze. Sorry. Excuse me. Yeah, $330 million a month.
All of this makes it sound like Xbox have finally found their footing, so much so that Xbox have completely shifted their strategy towards evolving Game Pass, even supposedly going around to other game studios to make the case why game subscription services and the eventual advent of cloud gaming are the future of the games industry. It's easy to see why Microsoft feel this way. They appear to be on their way to...
It is where it's going. PlayStation right now is they revamped their whole PlayStation Now service to be part of PlayStation Plus. Cloud gaming is a technology that everybody is trying to figure out. It's in its infancy right now, and it is a very, very, very small portion of the market. But as technology catches up with things, it's going to be utilized more and more. Like, it's built into televisions now, like, and it's getting better. It gets better every year, I want to say. There's no point where I'm like, man, this is getting a lot worse. No, games are getting more compacted. Like, they're figuring out how to do more with the hardware versus taxing the console to do more. It's just a really interesting time. The idea of a console market being like the barometer of success, it's going to shift. That's my belief, and I think that is the truth.
Establishing themselves as the best place to play other people's games, rather than just the only place to play Xbox games, with Xbox original titles just being there to add icing onto the cake. In this regard, it has much more in common with the successful strategies used by Microsoft for the Xbox 360, rather than what Nintendo or Sony have been doing for decades, except this time, it's for much lower maintenance cost than, say, producing a several $100 game console for each person who wants to play on the Xbox ecosystem. But this is where the potential problems with Game Pass present itself, because Microsoft are still producing Xbox consoles and are doing so at quite a significant loss. The Xbox Series X and S are in a weird spot. They are both a necessity and completely useless at the same time, as on one hand, most people don't want to go through the hassle of researching, funding and building a powerful PC just to play Xbox games, but on the other hand, if you do put the effort in at least getting
that's a Starforge PC.
built PC powerful enough to run Game Pass games, then what value is there in buying an Xbox?
Xbox doesn't care though. Play on PC. If you don't want to play on PC, buy an Xbox. Like, play wherever you want. That's Xbox's whole philosophy. Just get Game Pass, play wherever you want. That's it. It's not complicated. Like, I don't know why I don't know why people overcomplicate it so much.
A PC can do everything an Xbox Series X can at that point, but not only better in every single way, but with the almost unlimited feature set a modern Windows PC has, something an Xbox simply can't replicate in its current form. Game Pass's equal existence on PC has devalued the Xbox console considerably. It's a big reason why the console was sold so poorly despite the inherent value Xbox
40 million, 21 million. I mean, like, 21 million doesn't seem that bad. Yes, PlayStation 5 sold more, but acting like 21 million consoles sold in that period of time is bad. I don't think that's accurate.
Game Pass gives, and I don't see how a subscription service at just $10 a month is going to make up for the billions lost producing a games console nobody wants. And adding on to
they make $330 million a month. That's, in 3 months, that's a trillion, 330 million. So in 3 months, that's $1 billion. That's $4 billion a year. An exclusive costs, let's say 333 million, right? Just because I'm so bad at math. That is 3 exclusives every quarter that can be funded with Game Pass. Just with Game Pass, right?
that, is that exact same subscription service going to pay for the development and maintenance costs of the AAA games made by companies such as Activision and Bethesda, especially if Game Pass becomes the main avenue for playing these games rather than purchasing them separately at $60? Is that exact same subscription service going to pay for the extensive research and development costs of making Xbox's next console?
They're still going to get console revenue. So like it's lower than PlayStation, but it's not non-existent. So they are still selling consoles and they will still get subscribers. So you're talking about, I think his math was $300 million a month, right? So that's $300 million a month. That is a fully funded console exclusive based on like just sort of like the price of where we've seen these games launching. I think we know that Last of Us was like 222 million or something like that. Last of Us Part 2. So let's say today it's $300 million to make a console exclusive. Yeah, you're talking about one of those a month, basically funded by Game Pass. Plus you have the console revenue on it. Plus you have any other services like Xbox Live. I think that's still a subscription fee. So all the add-on content, like all that stuff is funneling money back in, and you have the profit margin from those console exclusives. There's still people that buy games. So like it's not like Game Pass is the only thing that people are going to buy and use. There are still other revenue avenues. So let's not pretend like Game Pass is the only one.
That is probably guaranteed to have the exact same results as the Series X and S if Game Pass remains available on PC. The answer to these questions is probably just about yes, but that's only if the subscription numbers of Xbox Game Pass remain at a consistent high level, and considering it has been confirmed by Phil Spencer himself that Game Pass subscriptions have plateaued in the last year, then the chances of it remaining high are somewhat questionable.
Well, it's not like it's not like all of a sudden people are going to be like, massive on-sub. We're down to 20, like 10 million people aren't going to on-sub from Game Pass tomorrow, right? So, yeah.
Of course, this is all just speculation at this point, but it's incredibly apparent that Xbox Game Pass, and by extension cloud gaming, is Xbox's future whether it's going to be successful or not. They have tried to play the traditional game of console exclusives for years and lost. So they are taking a page from Nintendo's book and trying to build out their own niche in uncharted territory. But unlike Nintendo's invention of hybrid consoles being so obviously lucrative from the beginning, Xbox Game Pass has a lot of uncertainty surrounding it as Microsoft's last-ditch effort to save the Xbox brand. And if the aforementioned strategies centered around Game Pass don't work out, I would not be surprised if Xbox decide within the next decade to either pull out of the console market entirely due to unnecessary...
I think they will. I think Xbox will get out of the console market, or they'll just have like one console SKU for that demographic. But for a long time, like, console sales plateau. The PlayStation 5 is not going to sell what would be like 200 million units, right? They're going to hit a market cap at some point. What's the biggest selling? My internet's not working right now. I don't know why this video is still playing, but like, at some point they're gonna hit market cap, right? Probably around, let's say they do 175 million in console sales, and Xbox will still have a console available. And let's say that does half what PlayStation does. You're still talking about another avenue of content delivery to 75 million people. I don't think the consoles go away entirely. I do think the focus will be on services for both brands. And, well, we'll see what the future holds.
Necessary costs, or try to avoid the problems with Xbox Game Pass by shifting the Xbox brand more towards something like glorified pre-built PCs running on affordable hardware and Windows rather than a
That's what consoles are. He just described consoles, man. Consoles are more affordable PCs, so yeah.
Proprietary pre-built PC Xbox Game Pass by shifting the Xbox brand more towards something like glorified pre-built PCs running on affordable hardware and Windows rather than a proprietary...
That's what a console is. The PlayStation runs on, I want to say the PlayStation runs on Linux. I know the PS2 ran on Linux because I installed Red Hat and I used to mess around with that stuff. But like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Xbox runs on Windows now. That is what a console is. It is a PC made just to play games. Like, it's a lockdown PC. So he's just describing a console.
Proprietary Xbox operating system, in effect combining both the PC and Xbox audiences for Game Pass.
You're just describing a console. You're describing a console. That's confusing. Sorry.
But all that is certain as of now is that Xbox...
They're going to get rid of a console and then release a console. That doesn't make any sense.
This exclusive problem has not yet been solved, but has instead transformed into a new kind of problem. One that Xbox are going to have to tackle alone. Thanks to my patrons on...
Anybody would have to tackle it alone. I think the video is great. Really good editing. I really, really like the thought that he put into this. My main issue with it is the negative connotation throughout. Let's listen to him thank his
Patreon for making videos like this possible. And if you would like to directly support the channel, you can consider joining my Patreon through the link in the top of the description below. This video took way longer to make than it should have, so to all the current patrons that have kept supporting me despite 2 months of silence, thank you for sticking around. This has been Ardrid, and thanks for listening.
Go check out Ardrid. Go check out Ardrid. Great video. Thank you, Ardrid.
On the 18th of January, 2022, Microsoft announced a deal worth...
Great video. I thought that was really, really interesting. I think he makes some good points, but it runs into that problem where there's a negative connotation to everything. Like, saying the original Xbox, like, was a failure. I don't think that's true. Like, I don't think that's an accurate portrayal of where it is. Ardrid has 14.4 thousand subscribers. I don't know who this content creator is, but it's insane that a video of that level of polish is on a channel with that few amount of subs. Yeah, and he has a somewhat small following on Twitter. Huh. I'm going to edit this out. I'm curious about his Patreon. He doesn't link to his Patreon. Oh, there it is. Okay. He has a very small Patreon to make content like that. But like, look, I have some critiques of the video and the phrasing, but holy crap, that video just came from somebody with 6 Patreon members and a channel of 14.4. If that's like him getting started out, I'm impressed. I think he can only improve from here. Great video. His videos seem to do quite well. Good stuff. Interesting. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. That was my reaction to Ardrid. Go check him out. I'm going to subscribe to his channel right now. And you should too. Sounds like the kids are getting crazy. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell to know my content goes live. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to the members for supporting the channel. If you want to support me by becoming a member, click that join button right at the bottom. Sounds like if you want to see my last React video, it's right here. And I'll catch you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.